Nia Osi had been in Seoul for 4 months before she saw him. She had known the risk when she accepted the transfer, had spent 3 weeks calculating it, mapping the probability of crossing paths in a city of 10 million people, weighing it against what her children needed. Zuri and Minho were 9 years old, and asking questions she could no longer answer with half-truths. Questions about their father's face, their Korean blood, the language that lived in them like a second heartbeat, even though they had only just begun to learn it properly. She had decided the risk was acceptable. She had been wrong. It was a Saturday afternoon in October, the kind of Seoul autumn day that makes you forget the city can be brutal. Cool air, gold light. The shopping district in Myeongdong crowded with families and tourists, and the particular energy of a city fully alive. The twins walked beside her, arguing about which street food to try first. Zuri pointing at the tteokbokki cart, Minho pulling toward the hotteok, and Nia was watching them and thinking that she had made the right choice bringing them here. That the look on Minho's face when he heard someone on the subway speak Korean and understood 3 full words was worth every complicated thing that had come with this move. That was the last clear thought she had before the world tilted. "Mama!" Zuri's scream cut through the crowd noise. She dropped to her knees beside her mother before the adults around her had processed what had happened. People stepped back, creating that particular ring of concerned paralysis. Everyone watching, so no one moving. "Mama, wake up! Please wake up!" Zuri shook her mother's shoulder with both hands, her voice cracking on the last word. Minho grabbed his mother's hand. He was not screaming. He was 9 years old, and he had learned early that when things went wrong, screaming did not fix them. He looked around the circle of watching faces with the focused expression of someone running through options. "Somebody help us," he said, loud and clear. "Our mama needs help right now." The crowd murmured, shifted. Still no one moved. That was when Zuri looked up and saw him. He was standing near a black car across the street, watching. Tall. Still. The particular stillness of a man who had trained himself never to react to anything before he understood it. He was looking at them with an expression Zuri could not read from this distance, but his face. Something about his face stopped her breath. She had seen that face before, not in person. In the mirror, in the particular angle of her own jaw. In Minho's eyebrows, the exact shape of them, which she had always thought came from a father she had never met. She did not think. She just called out across the street with everything she had. "Father, please help us." The man went completely still. For 3 seconds he did not move at all, as if the word had locked him in place. Then something happened behind his eyes, and his body moved before the rest of him had caught up, crossing the street in long, fast strides, the crowd parting for him without him asking. The particular way people move out of the way of someone who is used to being moved for. He dropped to one knee beside Nia. His hands went to her pulse, her breathing, on checking with the quick efficiency of a man who had seen people hurt before and knew what to look for. His face did something complicated that he controlled almost immediately. Minho looked up at him, with tears running silently down his face. "Please, sir. She just fell, and she won't wake up." The man looked at Minho, then at Zuri. Something in his expression fractured. He pulled out his phone and spoke in rapid Korean. 2 sentences. The kind of sentences that made things happen immediately. Then he looked at the twins and switched to careful English. "Your mother is going to be okay. I'm calling an ambulance. Stay close to me. Do not move." He took off his coat and placed it over Nia's body. His hands were not entirely steady. His name was Kang Minjun, though the twins would not know that for another hour. But he was 37 years old. He ran 3 legitimate companies and 1 organization that was not discussed in public, but that everyone in Seoul knew existed. He had not survived in his position for 7 years by being surprised by things. He was very thoroughly surprised right now. because the woman lying on the cold pavement of a Myeongdong shopping street, surrounded by his coat, was Nia. His Nia, from 11 years ago when she was a journalism student at Yonsei on an exchange fellowship, and he was finishing his business degree, and neither of them had any idea what their lives were about to become. Nia, who had disappeared on a Wednesday morning in February, without a note, without an explanation, without a single word. Nia, who was now clearly the mother of 2 children who looked at him with his own face. He counted backward. He was not a man who needed to count twice. The ambulance arrived in 4 minutes. Minjun's call had specified that it should. In the ambulance, he sat across from the twins, while a paramedic worked on Nia. He watched the children with the focused attention of someone trying to hold very still while the ground shifted underneath everything. "What are your names?" he asked. "I'm Zuri," the girl said, wiping her face with the back of her hand. "That's Minho. How old are you?" 9, the boy said. "We'll be 10 in April." Minjun kept his face absolutely neutral. 9 years old, born approximately 10 months after Nia had walked out of his life without a word. "Does your mother ever talk about your father?" he asked carefully. The twins exchanged a look, the kind of look that carries an entire conversation. "She says he lives far away," Zuri said. "She gets sad when we ask. So we stopped." "Why did I call you that?" she added, watching him with eyes that were too perceptive for 9 years old. "Father, I don't know why that word came out." Minjun was quiet for a moment. "Sometimes when we're frightened," he said, "we call out for what we need most." Zuri considered this. She did not look entirely satisfied with the answer, but she filed it away. The ambulance pulled up to Seoul National Hospital. More staff than necessary rushed out. Everyone in Seoul knew Kang Minjun's name, and when he requested something, the appropriate people moved accordingly. He went in first. Nia was awake. She had come around in the ambulance but said nothing, kept her eyes closed, and he had let her because it was not the time. Now she was in a private room on the 3rd floor, propped against pillows, an IV in her left arm. She looked exhausted in the specific way of someone who has been exhausted for months and has learned to perform alertness over it. When she saw him, her face did 4 things in rapid succession: recognition, shock, fear, and then a very practiced calm that he recognized immediately as the expression of a woman who had decided how this was going to go. "The children," she said, outside with a nurse. "They're fine. You can see them in a few minutes." "You need to leave," she said, "before they come in, before they get confused." "Confused about what?" Minjun walked to the foot of her bed. His voice was quiet, controlled. He had built an entire career on controlled. "About why 2 9-year-old children have my face. About why you disappeared in February 11 years ago. About why you are in Seoul working yourself until you collapse." Naya's hands tightened on the blanket. "You don't understand. Then explain it to me." And despite everything he was holding back, hurt came through. Real hurt. The kind he had not let himself feel in a long time. "Explain why I have children I never knew existed. Explain why the woman I was going to ask to stay. I had a ring, Naya. I had bought a ring. Just vanished." Something moved across her face. "You had a ring?" "Yes." He stopped himself. "That is not what matters right now. What matters is that you tell me what happened." Nia looked at the window for a long moment. Then she looked back at him. "Your mother came to me," she said. 3 weeks before I left. So she came to my apartment while you were in Busan for your father's meetings." Minjun went very still. "She told me I was putting you in danger. That your family had enemies who would use me against you. That the organization your father was passing to you required a specific kind of wife. Korean, connected, someone whose family could be vetted. She said if I truly loved you, I would understand, and I would leave." Naya's voice was steady, but her jaw was tight. She was very convincing. She knew things about your life that I didn't know. She made me understand that you were about to inherit something I had not fully grasped, and that my presence was a vulnerability you could not afford. She had no right. I know that now. I didn't know it then. What? I was 23, and I was in love, and a very formidable woman sat across from me and explained in precise detail why loving her son was going to get him killed. She paused. I left. I went back to Ghana. 3 months later, I found out I was pregnant. The room was very quiet. I wrote to you, Naya said. To your apartment. I told you everything. I asked what you wanted me to do, whether you wanted to know them, whether you wanted me to come back. I was not going to force anything. I just needed you to know. I never received any letter. I know. I waited 4 months. Nothing. I assumed your mother had intercepted it, or that you had received it and chosen silence. Either way, the message was the same. We were on our own. She looked at him steadily. So I raised them. Alone. In Ghana, then Tanzania, then London, then here. Why here? Minjun asked. Seoul, of all the cities. Because Zuri asked me one night why she had Korean eyes, and Minho asked me why he understood things on the Korean drama I was watching, and I realized I had been keeping half of them from themselves. Her voice did not waver. I accepted the transfer, because this city belongs to them as much as it belongs to you. And I was not going to let my fear be the reason they never knew it. Minjun sat down in the chair beside her bed. He put his hands flat on his knees and looked at them for a moment. My mother died 3 years ago, he said. She died without knowing she had grandchildren. That is her punishment and her loss. He looked up. I looked for you. 2 years. My people searched every country you had connections to. We found nothing. I was in my grandmother's village. No internet. We were completely off-grid until the twins were 2 years old. Something shifted in her expression. You actually looked. Every day for 2 years, he said. And then my father died, and I had to take over the organization, and I had to stop. And stopping felt like the worst thing I had ever done. He paused. Until today, when I understand the full cost of it. The door opened. The twins came in at speed, the nurse behind them apologizing. They went straight to Nia, both of them talking at once, checking her, demanding to know if she was all right. Zuri's hand on her mother's face, and Minho listing everything she had eaten in the past 2 days with prosecutorial precision. Minjun watched from his chair. He watched the love between them. Easy. Absolute. I'd built over 9 years of it being only the 3 of them, and felt the weight of everything he had missed settle onto him like something physical. Zuri looked at him over her mother's shoulder. Are you our father? She asked. The room went silent. Minjun looked at Nia. She closed her eyes briefly. Then she opened them and nodded. Barely. Yes, he said. Minho sat down on the edge of the bed and thought about this for a moment. With the focused expression Minjun was already beginning to recognize. Then he said, Why didn't you know about us before? Because I didn't know you existed, Minjun said. Your mother tried to tell me, but the message didn't reach me. It was not her fault, and it was not yours. It was a mistake that cost all of us a great deal, and I am sorry for it. Minho nodded slowly, processing. Zuri had not taken her eyes off Minjun. You're going to be in our lives now? She asked, not hopeful, testing. If your mother allows it, Minjun said, and if you both want it, yes. I am not going anywhere. Zuri looked at her mother. Naya looked at the ceiling. Something complicated moved across her face. Let's start slowly, Naya said finally. No decisions tonight. Everyone is tired and emotional, and this is too important to rush. It was not a yes, but it was not a no. Minjun, who had spent 11 years being a man who took what he needed from situations by force of will and preparation, sat in a hospital chair and accepted it. It was the hardest thing he had done in a long time. What Min-jun did not know, what he could not know, was that Nia had researched him before she accepted the soul transfer. She had known exactly who he was. No, not the college version, the current version. Kang Min-jun, head of the Kang organization, which controlled construction contracts, territory rights, and various other interests across 3 districts of Seoul. She had read everything she could find. She had spoken, carefully, to a journalist colleague who covered organized crime in South Korea, asking general questions framed as background research. She had gone in with her eyes open. She had also made a plan, because Nia Osai did not move her children to a new country without a plan. The plan was this: enroll the twins in an international school with a strong Korean cultural program. Let them learn the language, eat the food, understand that half of them was from here. If Min-jun never crossed their path, which was possible, even likely, now in a city this size, then they would grow up knowing their Korean heritage without the complications of their Korean father's world. If he did cross their path, she had a plan for that too. The plan had not accounted for her collapsing in Myeongdong on a Saturday afternoon. She was revising it now, in a hospital bed, with an IV in her arm, and her children pressing against her sides, and the man she had loved at 23 sitting 4 feet away looking at her like she was something he had lost, and not yet dared to believe he had found. She was not going to let emotion drive this. She had made that mistake once, at 23, letting love override calculation, and she had paid for it in ways she was still paying. She was going to be smart. The next morning she called her colleague Min-ji, the organized crime journalist, from the hospital bathroom, while the twins watched cartoons. "Kang Min-jun," she said when Min-ji answered. A pause. "Why?" "Background." "Nia." Min-ji's voice was careful. "He's not background level. Why are you asking about him?" "Because he is the father of my children, and he found us yesterday, and I need to know what I am dealing with." A longer pause. "Oh, okay. How long do you have?" "Give me the version that matters." Min-ji gave her 20 minutes of careful, precise information. The Kang organization was old. Min-jun's father had built it. Min-jun had inherited it, and by most accounts, run it more cleanly than his father had. Fewer direct confrontations, more strategic pressure. He was not known for violence, unless provoked significantly. He had 3 active enemies worth knowing about: the Jung family in eastern Seoul, the Park Network in Incheon, and a newer group called the Sao Collective, who were trying to establish themselves in Min-jun's territory. "The Jung family is the immediate concern," Min-ji said. "They've been pushing at Kang territory for 6 months, looking for a pressure point. They haven't found one yet because Min-jun has been very careful about what he exposes." Nia thought about this. "And if he suddenly had a very public family?" "Then he would have a pressure point," Min-ji said quietly. "Nia, be careful." She went back to the room and looked at her children, and thought about pressure points. Then she made 2 decisions. The first, she would allow Min-jun into their lives. Carefully. On her terms. Because her children deserved their father, and because, if she was being honest with herself, in keeping him at a distance in this city was probably less safe than keeping him close enough to know what was coming. The second, she was going to tell him what she knew. All of it. Because she was not going to be managed, and she was not going to be protected without her knowledge. And if they were going to do this, then they were going to do it as equals. Or not at all. She waited until the twins were asleep that evening. Then she called the number the nurse had given her. Min-jun had left it before he went home, quietly, without making it a thing. He answered on the first ring. "I know about the Jung family," she said without preamble. "I know about the Park Network and the Sao Collective. I know that you have been the most careful man in Seoul for 7 years about not giving your enemies a target. And I know that my children's faces on social media would hand them one. She paused. I am not telling you this so you can protect me. I am telling you this so we can protect them together. Those are my terms. Equal information. Equal decisions. No going behind my back. Are we agreed? Silence on the other end. She could almost hear him recalibrating. How do you know all of that? He asked. I'm a journalist, she said. I researched you before I moved my children to your city. I was not going to walk into this blind. Another silence. Longer. Agreed, he said. Good. Come to the hospital tomorrow at 10. We will talk about what this looks like. She hung up and felt, for the first time since the pavement came up to meet her, like herself again. He came at 10. He brought food, not flowers. Wine food, a careful selection that included the Ghanaian chin-chin the twins loved, which told her he had done his own research overnight, and she filed that away. They sat at the small table in her hospital room while the twins ate, and he laid out, plainly, what he thought the risks were and what he proposed to do about them. The young family will see the opportunity if we become visible, he said. My proposal is that we are not visible. Not yet. The twins come to know me gradually. We keep it out of social media. We take our time. And when the twins want to talk about their father at school, Nia asked, we prepare an answer that is true, but not detailed. Their father is a businessman. He and their mother are working on their relationship. Nothing that invites further questions. Zuri looked up from her chin-chin. We're not babies. We can keep a secret if we understand why it matters. Minjun looked at her. You're right. And you deserve an honest explanation. He was quiet for a moment. Some people in my business use the people their enemies love as a way to apply pressure. If those people know about you, they might try to get to me through you. That is what we are trying to prevent. By keeping us secret, Minho said. By keeping you safe, Minjun said. There is a difference. Minho thought about this. For how long? Until I have neutralized the specific people who pose the most immediate risk, 3 to 6 months. And then we can be normal? Zuri asked. More normal, Minjun said carefully. My life will never be entirely without complication. I will not lie to you about that. The twins looked at each other. Zuri looked at her mother, and Naya gave a small nod. Okay, Zuri said, but we want weekly updates, so we know what's happening. We're not going to be the last ones to find out about things that affect us. Minjun blinked, then he almost smiled. Weekly updates. Agreed. She gets that from you, Naya said quietly. The negotiating. I thought she got it from you, he said. For a moment, across the hospital table, something warm moved between them. Then Nia looked away, and they went back to building the plan. Do you think Nia is right to trust him, or is she walking her children into danger? Comment your theory below, and stay tuned so you don't miss what comes next. The weeks that followed had a careful rhythm. Minjun came twice a week. He picked the twins up from school, took them to Taekwondo. He had assessed the instructor, the facility, and the security of the route, and approved all three before suggesting it, and brought them home. Nia was usually there when he arrived. Sometimes she was not, working late at the second job she had not yet told him she still needed, and she would come home to find him in her small kitchen, making juk with the focused expression of a man who had decided to learn something and was not going to do it badly. You do not need to cook, she told him the first time. The twins need to eat when they come home, he said. You are not here. Someone needs to cook. I had a system. Leftover rice and whatever was in the freezer, Zuri called from the living room. He makes it better, Mama. Nia stood in her kitchen doorway watching Kong Minjun, one of the most dangerous men in Seoul. I carefully taste the juk and adjust the seasoning with the focused expression of someone who took this seriously, and felt something shift in her chest that she was not ready to name. She went to change out of her work clothes and did not think about it. But the plan had a crack in it, and the crack was the internet. 3 weeks after the hospital, a photo appeared. Then another. Someone at the taekwondo studio with a phone and a vague memory of a face they had seen on a business news website. 2 posts, barely noticed at first, and then an account with a large following reposted with the caption, "Is this Kang Minjun at a children's taekwondo class? Who are the kids?" By morning, it had spread. Nia saw it at 6 a.m. when Minji sent her a link with a single message. "It's starting." She called Minjun. He answered immediately, which meant he had already seen it. "How bad?" she asked. "Manageable, if we control the next 24 hours. Tell me exactly what that means," he told her. It was not a comfortable conversation. By the end of it, she had agreed to 3 things she did not like and held the line on 2 others, and they had a plan that was genuinely joint, which was the only kind she was willing to accept. What neither of them knew was that across the city, a man named Jung De-hyun was looking at the same posts and making his own calculations. It happened on a Tuesday. The twins were in the courtyard during lunch. Zuri was showing her friends a leg sweep Minjun had taught her, demonstrating the mechanics with the seriousness of someone who had been told precision mattered. Minho was under a tree with a book, which was where Minho could usually be found when given the option. The van pulled up to the side gate at 12:43. 4 men in maintenance uniforms, toolboxes, work orders that had been forged well enough to pass a quick glance. The kind of operation that had been planned carefully by people who understood how school security worked and where its gaps were. What they had not planned for was Mr. Park. Mr. Park was 61 years old and had been a security guard at this school for 14 years. He had seen the work order that morning, and he had also noticed that the plumbing company listed on it had gone out of business 8 months ago, which he knew because his brother-in-law had worked there. He had flagged it to the administration. He had been told it was probably a clerical error. He had not believed this, and so when the van arrived, Mr. Park was already moving toward the gate, and when the men got out and he saw the way they moved, not like plumbers, like something else entirely, he hit the alarm before they reached the courtyard. The first 2 men went for Zuri. She saw them coming. Later, she would not be entirely sure how she had known, only that something about the way they moved had been wrong in a way her body registered before her mind did. She had already taken 2 steps back when the first man's hand closed on her arm. She did what Minjun had taught her, not the full technique. She was 9 years old, and he was twice her size. But enough. She dropped her weight, twisted into the grip the way she had been shown, and screamed as loud as she could. Minho was already running, shouting for teachers, his book abandoned under the tree. Then Minjun's people moved. There were 3 of them. Naya did not know about them yet. This was one of the things Minjun had done without telling her, and he would answer for it later. But in this moment, they were the reason the outcome was what it was. 2 in the courtyard dressed as parents, 1 near the gate posing as a delivery driver. They reached Zuri in 4 seconds, and the fight that followed was brief and brutal and over before most of the watching children fully understood what had happened. 2 of the attackers escaped in the van. 2 were held on the ground by Minjun's people until the police arrived 40 seconds later, a response time that was also not coincidental. The twins were unhurt. Nia got the call at work at 12:48. She was there by 1:15. She found them in the principal's office, eye wrapped in blankets, hands around hot chocolate. When they saw her, both twins stood up at the same time, and she crossed the room in 3 steps and held them and didn't let go for a long time. "We're okay," Zuri said into her shoulder. "Appa's people were there." Nia pulled back. "Appa's people." Zuri nodded toward the door, where 2 of Minjun's guards stood watching the hallway. Minjun arrived 6 minutes later. He came in fast, took one look at the twins, and the expression on his face was something Nia had not seen before. Not the controlled face of boardrooms, not the careful warmth he showed the children. Something raw, something that looked like a man confronting the gap between what he had prepared for and how it felt when it actually happened. He checked them over himself, hands gentle, voice steady. "Tom, you did exactly right," he told Zuri. "The drop and twist, exactly right." "It worked," Zuri said, and her voice was not entirely steady. "It worked," he confirmed. "I'm very proud of you." Then he looked at Naya. She kept her face neutral until the principal asked the guards to step out and give the family a moment. Then she stood up and said, very quietly, "Outside. Now." They stood in the empty hallway, the door closed behind them. "You put guards on them without telling me," she said. "Yes." We agreed. Equal information, equal decisions. "We agreed to that," Minjun said. "And I broke it. I am not going to pretend I didn't or explain it away. I broke the agreement because I assessed the risk after the photos went up, and I made a unilateral decision that their safety was more important than keeping the agreement." He met her eyes. "Sam, I was right. But I was also wrong to go behind your back. Both things are true." Naya looked at him for a long moment. The honesty of it, the refusal to choose one justification and hide behind it, was not what she had expected. "If you had told me," she said slowly, "what would I have said? You would have said you needed to think about it. You would have had questions. It might have taken 2 or 3 days to reach agreement." He paused. "The photos went up on a Thursday. The attempt was Tuesday. We did not have 2 or 3 days. So you decided for me. I decided for them. For their lives. Not for your peace of mind or mine." His voice was very even. "I will accept whatever consequence you decide is appropriate. But I need you to know that I would do it again. And keeping them alive is not something I am willing to negotiate." Naya turned away from him. She looked down the hallway, at the colorful student artwork on the walls, at the completely ordinary school that had nearly become something else entirely today. "The guards stay," she said finally. "I want to know who they are. I want to meet them. I want to know the protocols. No more surprises. If you change the arrangement, you tell me first. If there genuinely isn't time, you tell me the moment there is time." She turned back. "And Minjun, if you ever make a decision about my children's lives without at least trying to reach me first, I don't care how good your reason is. We are done. Are we clear?" "Completely clear," he said. She nodded. "Now tell me about the Young family. Everything. And tell me what you are going to do about them," he told her. All of it. And when he was finished, she asked 3 questions that told him she had been thinking about this more carefully than he had assumed. "What is their most significant financial exposure?" she asked. "Their gambling operations, and the money they run through restaurant fronts." "And the 2 men in police custody, what will they be charged with?" "Attempted kidnapping, aggravated assault, enough to hold them." "Good." She was quiet for a moment. "I have a colleague who covers organized crime. She has been building a file on Young operations for 18 months and cannot publish without a trigger event. She now has one." She looked at him. "I am not going to tell you how to handle your side of this, but I am going to handle mine. If you dismantle their operations at the same time their attempted kidnapping is front-page news, the combination will be difficult to recover from." Minjun looked at her. "You researched me before you moved here," he said slowly. "You have a journalist contact with a file on my enemies. You have been thinking about how to neutralize this threat since before it happened." "I moved my children to a complicated city," Naya said. "I prepared." Something changed in his expression. Not surprise, exactly. Something more like recognition. "Equal partnership," he said. "Equal partnership," she confirmed. "Did you see that coming?" Drop a comment. Are you Team Nia or Team Minjun in this partnership? And subscribe so you don't miss the takedown. They worked separately and in parallel, the way people work when they trust each other's competence, but are still learning to trust each other. Minjun moved through his side of it, with the cold precision of a man who had been waiting for a reason to end the Jung family's ambitions permanently. He did not rush. He did not make noise. He spent 4 days mapping every Jung operation in Seoul with the thoroughness of someone who intended to dismantle all of it at once, rather than give them time to patch holes as they appeared. Gambling houses in Mapo and Dongdaemun, 3 restaurant fronts in Yongsan, laundering money through cash-heavy menus and inflated supplier invoices. A logistics company in Incheon that moved things across the port that were not listed on manifests. 14 people in mid-level positions who kept the whole structure running, and who, when offered the choice between loyalty to a sinking organization and walking away clean, would mostly choose to walk. He had learned this about people over 7 years. Loyalty was expensive. Most people could not afford it when the cost became clear. On Nia's side, Minji had been ready for 18 months. I need 48 hours to verify the new material and clear it with my editor, Minji told her on the phone the night after the school incident. The attempted kidnapping of 2 children is the public interest hook I needed. Everything else, the gambling operations, the port logistics, the restaurant fronts, I have documentation on all of it. I just needed something that made publishing it the right thing to do rather than just the interesting thing. You have it now, Nia said. I do. A pause. Nia, are you safe? I am working on it. That is not the same as yes. No, Nia agreed. It is not. But it is the honest answer. She did not hide the twins. She had considered it. Minjun had suggested a safe house, and she had listened to the suggestion carefully before declining. Running would make them look like targets who knew they could be taken. Staying, with the guards now visible rather than hidden, made a different statement. She walked the twins to school herself every morning with 2 of Minjun's people in clear sight, and she held her head up, and she did not look like a woman who was afraid. She was afraid, but she had learned a long time ago that fear and courage were not opposites. Fear was what you felt. Courage was what you did with it. The twins, for their part, were extraordinary. Odzuri went back to school the day after the incident and walked into her classroom and sat down and opened her books. When a classmate asked what had happened, she said, "Some people tried to scare my family. It didn't work." Then she opened her notebook and waited for the lesson to begin. Minho was quieter about it, which was his way. But that Friday evening when Minjun came to pick them up, Minho stood in the doorway for a moment, before going to him, and said, "Your plan worked. The part where you had people there. I know Mama was angry about how you did it. But it worked, and I wanted you to know I noticed." Minjun crouched down to his level. "I should have told your mother. She deserved to know." "Yes," Minho agreed. "But you also kept us alive. Both things matter." He went to get his taekwondo bag. Minjun stayed crouched for a moment, looking at the space where his son had been standing, feeling something that had no name in any language he spoke. On the 6th day, Minji's piece ran. It ran on 2 major platforms simultaneously. A full investigative feature on Jung family operations, with documents, with named sources, with the attempted school kidnapping as its central event. It named the 2 men in custody. It traced the money through the restaurant fronts. It mapped the port operation. It was thorough and precise and completely devastating. By noon, it had been picked up by 4 additional outlets. By 3 in the afternoon, 3 Jung-affiliated politicians had issued statements of distance. By 6, 2 of the restaurant fronts had been visited by tax authorities acting on anonymous tips that Minjun had arranged to arrive precisely as the story broke. Daehyun called Minjun at 8 that evening. "This was you," he said. "The journalist piece was not me," Minjun said, which was technically true. "The rest of it, yes. You want a meeting?" I want you to understand something first, Minjun said. Before we meet, I want you to spend tonight understanding exactly what your situation is. Count what you still have in the morning and call me back. He hung up. Naya called 20 minutes later. Minji says the story has been shared 40,000 times. I saw. Is it enough? Not yet. But it will be. He paused. The meeting will be tomorrow. I want you to know that going in. I know, she said. I've been watching the coverage. The timeline matches what you said it would. A pause. Minjun, in the meeting. What does Daehyun actually need to hear in order to leave and not come back? He told her. She was quiet for a moment. There is something else, she said. Something that will make it permanent rather than just painful. Tell me, she told him. It was not the kind of thing he would have thought of, because it was not the kind of leverage he was accustomed to using. It was reputational rather than physical. The kind of damage that could not be repaired by rebuilding operations elsewhere, because it would follow Daehyun wherever he went. Your colleague can do this? Minjun asked. She can verify it, and publish a follow-up piece that focuses specifically on Daehyun personally, his history before Seoul. There are things in it he has kept buried for 20 years. She has had the documentation for 6 months and has been waiting for the right moment. Why are you telling me? Because if you go into that meeting tomorrow with only your leverage, he will agree and rebuild. If you go in with both, he will agree and be finished. She paused. I told you, equal partnership. The meeting was in a warehouse by the river, neutral ground, each side bringing 2 people, which was the convention. Minjun brought Yoongi. He had expected to bring more. Yoongi had argued for more. But Minjun understood something about this meeting that required him to arrive without the appearance of force. Not because he lacked it, but because the leverage he was bringing in did not require it. He was not here to threaten Daehyun into leaving. He was here to show him that leaving was the only remaining option. Daehyun arrived looking like a man who had spent a sleepless night counting and had not liked the numbers. You have destroyed 2 years of work, he said. You tried to take my children from their school, Minjun replied. I want you to understand that those 2 facts are connected. This is what happens when you make that choice. And if I leave Seoul, you rebuild what you've taken. No, Minjun said. What I've taken is gone. The restaurant fronts are under investigation. The port operation has been compromised in ways that will take years to rebuild somewhere else, if you can rebuild it at all. The gambling houses are finished. He paused. But you are alive. Your key people are alive. You have operations in Busan and Gwangju that I have not touched. If you leave Seoul tonight and you do not return, those operations remain untouched. And if I don't, then tomorrow morning my colleague publishes the second piece, the one about Daehyun Jung specifically, the one with the documentation from Incheon 12 years ago. Minjun watched the man's face. You know what documentation I mean. The blood left Daehyun's face. There it was, the thing that could not be survived. Not the loss of operations. Operations could be rebuilt. Not the financial damage. Money could be made again. This was different. This was the kind of history that ended careers and freedom simultaneously. And Daehyun knew it, and Minjun could see him knowing it. You went through a woman journalist to get to me, Daehyun said. And there was contempt in it, but also something else. Something that sounded like a man looking for a way to be angry instead of afraid. The journalist pursued this investigation independently, Minjun said. She is the mother of my children. She is also the best investigative journalist currently working in Seoul. I would strongly suggest that in your future career, wherever it takes you, you do not make the mistake of underestimating women who are protecting their families. Daehyun looked at him for a long moment. We leave by the end of the week, he said. You leave by tomorrow morning, Minjun said. The week is a negotiating position. It is not accepted. Another long moment. Tomorrow morning, Daehyun said. And this is finished. This is finished, Minjun agreed. For as long as you stay finished. If I ever see Jung operations in Seoul again, the Incheon piece publishes regardless of anything else. Daehyun left. Yoongi watched him go, then turned to Minjun. The second piece, he said. That was hers. Yes. She handed you the thing that ended it. Yes. Yoongi was quiet for a moment. She's extraordinary. I know, Minjun said. I knew it 11 years ago. I am only recently understanding the full extent of it. Minjun texted Nia at 9 that evening. It's done. He's leaving by morning. Her reply came 30 seconds later. Minji is holding the second piece. She'll only publish if he comes back. Then, after a pause, you did well. He read it twice. Coming from Nia, who did not offer assessments she did not mean, it landed differently than praise usually landed. He sent back, we did well. 3 dots appeared. Then disappeared. Then, yes, we did. Did you think Nia would be the one to end it? Drop a comment. And subscribe so you don't miss what happens when these two finally stop being partners in crisis and start being something else. The weeks after the Jung family left Seoul were different from the weeks before. The immediate threat was gone. The guards remained. Minjun had been honest about the fact that there would always be some level of security, and Nia had accepted this in the spirit in which it was offered, which was honesty rather than pressure. But the particular tension of the preceding weeks lifted, and what remained was something that neither of them had quite prepared for. Ordinary life. Together. It did not look the way Nia had imagined it might, back when she had allowed herself to imagine it at all. It was not romantic in any conventional sense. It was Tuesday evenings, with Minho's maths homework spread across her kitchen table, and Minjun working through the problems with a patience she had not expected, explaining each step twice without being asked. It was Saturday mornings at the Taekwondo studio, watching Zuri and Minho spar, while she and Minjun stood against the wall, and she told him, for the first time, about her grandmother's village, about the weeks after the twins were born, about what it had felt like to hold 2 people she had made by herself, and understand that they were her entire world now. He listened. He did not look at his phone. He asked questions that told her he had heard everything she said, not just the words, but the weight underneath them. You were doing it, she said one Saturday, in the car on the way home from the studio. Doing what? Listening. Not actually listening. She looked at the road. You were not like this before. In college you listened, but you were always also somewhere else. Part of you was always managing something. I was 26 and running errands for my father's organization while pretending to be a student, he said. I was usually actually somewhere else. And now? Now I am here, he said simply. There is nowhere else I want to be. She looked at him briefly. He kept his eyes on the road. In the back seat, Zuri caught Minho's eye and made a small, significant face. Minho looked out the window to hide his smile. One evening in November, Minjun arrived to find Nia on the phone, her voice tight and professional in the way it got when she was talking to her second employer. He set down the food he had brought. She had, finally, after 2 weeks of argument, now allowed him to cover a portion of the household expenses, framed as child support rather than charity, which was the only framing she would accept, and waited. When she hung up, she was quiet for a moment. They are reducing my hours, she said. The second job. Budget cuts. Okay, Minjun said. It isn't okay. I calculated my budget on the basis of... She stopped. I am not asking you to fix it. I know you're not. I'm just telling you. I know. He sat down at the kitchen table. Can I tell you something? She sat across from him. Go ahead. I have been trying to find the right way to say this for 3 weeks, and there is no right way. So I'm just going to say it. He looked at her directly. I want to take care of you. Not because you cannot take care of yourself. You have demonstrated that comprehensively, and I am not a man who fails to notice comprehensive demonstrations. but because I want to. Because you have been doing this alone for 9 years. And you should not have been alone. And I was not there. And I cannot give you those 9 years back. But I can be here now. He paused. The second job is not something you should need. The budget calculations you are doing at night when the twins are asleep are not calculations you should be doing alone. Let me be here. That is what I am asking. Naya looked at him for a long time. I have been alone for a long time, she said finally. I do not know how to let someone in without calculating the risk. Calculate it, he said. I will wait. She almost smiled. When you have changed. I have been given a reason to. The silence between them was not uncomfortable. It was the silence of two people sitting with something real, not rushing it, letting it be what it was. The second job, she said finally. I will let it go. But I keep my first job. My career is mine. Completely yours, he said immediately. I would never. I know, she said. But I needed to say it. I know, he said. And I needed to hear it. It was Zuri who broke the final distance. 4 weeks after the Jung family left Seoul, she came to find Minjun in the kitchen on a Thursday evening, where he was making juk again. He had been practicing, and it had gotten significantly better. And she sat at the table and watched him for a while. Can I ask you something? She said. Always. Do you love our mother? Minjun kept stirring. Yes. Does she know? I believe she suspects. She knows, Zuri said with the certainty of someone who had been watching her mother's face for 9 years and could read it completely. She just doesn't know what to do with it yet. She was quiet for a moment. She's been scared her whole life, not in an obvious way, in the way where she plans everything and prepares everything because she's trying to make sure nothing can surprise her and hurt her. You surprised her and hurt her once. She's not going to let that happen again without being very sure. I know, Minjun said. So what are you going to do about it? He looked at his daughter. 9 years old. His mother's nose, his eyes, something entirely her own underneath both. I was thinking, he said carefully, that I might ask her to marry me. Zuri considered this. When? I was going to wait until she was ready. She'll wait forever if you leave it to her, Zuri said, with the practical directness of someone who had decided this conversation needed to be had and was having it. She needs you to decide first, to show her you've decided. Then she can decide. She stood up. Talk to Minho. He'll want to be involved in the plan. She went back to her room. Minjun stood in the kitchen with the juk bubbling on the stove, feeling like he had just been given both advice and instructions, and finding that he did not mind at all. The twins planned most of it. He executed their vision. The venue was his grandmother's house in an older neighborhood of Seoul, a traditional house he had kept exactly as she left it, which he had never brought anyone to before, which he told Naya simply when she asked where they were going. Her expression when she heard this told him she understood what it meant. The twins had coordinated with his assistant. Flowers, Ghanaian and Korean both, the specific combination Zuri had specified over 3 phone calls. Candles, music that moved between Korean ballads and the Tanzanian songs Nia played on Sunday mornings when she thought the twins were still asleep. A table set with food from both cultures, meeting in the middle. Nia stood in the doorway taking it in, and Minjun watched her face. The twins, she said. They had very specific requirements, he confirmed. I was mostly there to carry things. She walked through the room slowly, looking at the flowers, at the table, at the care that had gone into every detail. When she turned back, her eyes were bright. This represents us, Minho announced from beside the table, where he and Zuri were standing with the expressions of people who had worked hard on a project and were waiting for the evaluation. 2 cultures. 1 family. It's perfect, Naya said. Her voice was not entirely steady. Now sit, Mama, Zuri said, and Appa has something to say. They sat. The twins watched with the focused attention of people who had a stake in the outcome. Minjun did not kneel immediately. He sat across from her first and looked at her for a moment. This woman who had come to his city with her eyes open and her plans made and her children's hands held, who had faced everything that his world had sent at her and had not run, who had stood beside him in the hardest weeks and made the hard thing possible. "So I want to say something before the ring," he said. "Something that is just true and does not require anything from you." Naya looked at him. "You came to Seoul knowing who I was and what my life looked like," he said. "You researched it. You planned for it. You prepared your children for the complicated truth of it. You did not do that because you were coming back to me. You did it for them, because they deserved to know both sides of themselves." He paused. "And in doing that, in giving them that, you gave me something I did not deserve and had not earned. You gave me a second chance I had no right to expect." He stopped. "I am not going to spend the rest of my life explaining to you how grateful I am. I am going to spend the rest of my life making sure you do not need to be told. You will be able to see it." Naya pressed her lips together. Her eyes were full. He reached into his pocket. The ring was platinum with 2 stones, a tanzanite and a diamond, purple and clear, Ghana and Korea. "Nia, will you marry me? Not the version of this where I was young and unprepared and didn't fight hard enough for you. The current version. The one where I know exactly who you are, and you know exactly who I am, and we choose each other anyway. Complicated, imperfect, and completely certain." Naya looked at the ring, at the twins, who were gripping each other's arms and barely breathing, at the room that held both their worlds together, at the man across from her, who had, over the past months, done the slow and unglamorous work of becoming someone she could trust. She had calculated the risk. She had been calculating it for months. "Yes," she said, completely certain. The twins erupted. Zuri made a sound she would later deny. Minho did a small, controlled fist pump that was entirely his father's gesture and entirely his own at the same time. Minjun slid the ring onto Naya's finger, and she looked at it and laughed. A real laugh, open and sudden. The laugh he had been waiting to hear, without the caution underneath it. He pulled her up and kissed her, and the twins made the appropriate noises of protest, while clearly being delighted. "Can we eat now?" Minho asked. "We've been waiting for hours." "You have been waiting for 40 minutes, Zuri corrected. It felt like hours. They sat down to the table that held both their worlds, and they ate, and they talked about everything and nothing. And outside the old house in its quiet neighborhood, Seoul turned into evening around them. The wedding was 3 months later. Nia had wanted something small. The twins had wanted something that reflected the full reality of what they were, which turned out to mean a medium-sized gathering that required 2 ceremonies, 3 outfit changes, and a seating arrangement that took Minjun's assistant 4 days to finalize, because placing his organization's senior people adjacent to Nia's journalist colleagues required more strategic thought than most peace negotiations. Nia's mother flew in from Ghana. She was a formidable woman who had not fully forgiven her daughter for the years of managing alone, and had expressed this opinion frequently on the phone. She arrived at the airport in Seoul, and Minjun met her himself, which he had decided to do without telling Nia. He drove her from the airport, and by the time they reached the apartment, something had shifted in the older woman's expression. Not approval yet, but the particular focused attention of someone reassessing their initial position. That evening, Naya's mother sat in the small kitchen and watched Minjun make myeokguk with the careful attention of a man who had practiced and intended to get it right. And she watched her daughter watch him, and she said, quietly, to the twins who were doing homework at the table, "He loves her very much." "We know," Zuri said, without looking up from her worksheet. "Has he always?" "He lost her for 11 years, and spent 2 of them looking," Minho said. "That's what Appa told us." Nia's mother was quiet for a moment. Then she picked up a spoon and tasted the mayak guk and told Minjun it needed more sesame oil, and he added more sesame oil without argument, and the kitchen smelled like something being built. The ceremony was held in a garden venue. First, a Ghanaian celebration. Bright fabric, drumming. The particular joy of Nia's family that turned every gathering into something alive. Then, a Korean ceremony in hanbok, the twins in coordinated outfits that they had strong opinions about and had negotiated for 3 weeks. Minjun's people came. They sat on one side of the garden in their suits, looking like what they were, and then Minho dragged 3 of the most serious-faced ones to the dance floor during the reception and demonstrated a move he had learned from his Ghanaian grandmother, and the afternoon became something else entirely. The twins walked their mother down the aisle, both of them. Zuri on her left, Minho on her right. When the officiant asked who gave this woman, they said together, not rehearsed, not cued, just both of them knowing. We do. Minjun's vows were short. He had written longer ones and cut them, because he had learned that the things that mattered most in his life did not require many words. I promise to be the father our children deserve, he said. The husband you have earned the right to expect, the man who is in the room, all the way in the room, every day. I know who you are. I am not going to forget. Naya's vows were simpler still. I promise to trust you when fear tells me to run. I have been afraid a long time. I am choosing, today, to be less afraid than I am brave. I love you. I choose you. I will keep choosing you. When they kissed, the garden erupted. In the evening, when the guests had thinned and the twins had fallen asleep in the corner on a pile of coats, looking young in the way children do when they sleep, regardless of how old they act when they're awake, Naya and Minjun stood together watching them. Are you scared? He asked. Constantly, she said. You? Yes, but different than before. He looked at the twins. Before, I was scared of losing things. Operations, territory, position. Things I had built. Now, I am scared of something that cannot be replaced. He paused. It is a better kind of fear. It is, she agreed. She leaned against him. He put his arm around her, and they stood there in the evening garden of a city that was theirs. Both of them. And in the way a place becomes yours, when you have fought for something in it, and the thing you fought for is sleeping 10 feet away, in the gentle, exhausted way of children who have had a very full and very good day. What do we do now? She asked. Now we go home, he said. We put them to bed. We sit in the kitchen and drink tea, and we build the life we are building. Same as yesterday. Same as tomorrow. That sounds right, she said. It is not perfect, he said. It never will be. Good, she said. I never trusted perfect. Real is better. She had said this to herself, alone, in harder moments. Saying it now felt like something completing itself. They woke the twins gently. Zuri surfaced immediately, already talking. Minho took longer, blinking into the lights, fun looking at his parents, standing together, and giving a slow smile that was all his own. Are we going home? He asked. We're going home, Minjun said. Minho stood up and took his father's hand on one side and his mother's on the other, and Zuri took her mother's free hand, and they walked out of the garden together into the Seoul night. Behind them, the lights of the venue were still glowing. Ahead of them, the city stretched out, familiar and complicated, and entirely theirs. Not a perfect life, a real one, which as it turned out was better.